Hello everyone, today we have here the 8bitDo Pro 3, and I'm gonna say straight away, the buttons are not good. They're super loud, but I'll show you how to change them from this to this. In the ergonomics, the Pro 3 and Pro 2 are identical. But there's two new shortcuts on the top, and the position of these shortcuts is a bit different. Usually the shortcut button stays close to the triggers. This way you can push the analog triggers and have quick access to the shortcut, which generally is mapped to the shoulder buttons. This way, instead of doing this, you can do this. But on the Pro 3 here, they're close to the shoulder buttons instead of the triggers. The triggers are analog triggers, and this time they use Hall effect sensors. And you have a trigger stopper with a clicky micro switch. The trigger stopper is very solid, and you can push it very hard without the button sinking in too much. Since the trigger stoppers and the charging pins are located here, you don't have access anymore to the removable battery. A lot of people complained about this, but honestly, I have never used the Pro 2 with removable batteries. Not only because the included battery pack is very hard to remove, but batteries tend to leak, and I had a terrible experience with the Wii remotes. And this time the controller includes a charging dock, so it will always be at full charge when you pick it up. The switch in the back is used to change between Bluetooth and 2.4 GHz dongle. The Bluetooth side has two connections, and the dongle auto-detects which platform you're using. On the Pro 2 you had switch, D input and X input, but all of them were Bluetooth connections, you didn't have a dongle. The back buttons have been changed a bit. When fully pressed, they stop a bit higher above the shell. On the Pro 2 it was completely flat with a shell. The analog sticks does not have an internal restriction ring, but they have a metal shaft and they have anti-friction rings. They're also removable. On the Pro 2 it was not removable and it was made of plastic, and I added the anti-friction tape because it didn't have anti-friction rings. With the Pro 3, 8bitDo sends you additional ball-top sticks. These are meant to simulate an arcade stick. For the right side, the stick is quite taller, which will assist you in aiming. And on the left side, you can hold the stick like an arcade stick. It doesn't have that satisfying clicky response, but you can still perform your combos very well. And the Dpad was the biggest change in this controller. It is now tactile with mechanical dome switches, and it feels just like the 8bitDo Ultimate 2 and 2C. Actually, it's a bit louder, but the performance is the same. Also on the Pro 2, the shell was too tight around the Dpad. When you pushed it, you could feel the Dpad rubbing on the shell. Speaking about the buttons, 8bitDo changed a bit. The letters are printed in the buttons instead of the shell, and they are super loud and clacky. Compared with the 8bitDo Pro 2, you can see the difference. And it's very annoying when you're playing Super Mario World and you have to hold the Y button and press the B button. The buttons are actually removable, but you cannot remove them if your hands are sweaty. With the hands completely dry, you can actually pick the buttons from the shell. But still, it's not an easy task. That's why they added a tool inside the dock to make it easier for you to remove the buttons. This metal part here is the real button. The other side is just a magnetic plastic cap that goes on top of that. So using the tool, you can remove the buttons and make your own layout. You can even make the original GameCube layout. And inside the dock, along with the dongle, which again is a USB Type-C dongle, you get 4 extra buttons with the Japanese Super Nintendo colors. But even with these buttons, it's still very loud. Checking the dock, it is the same as the Ultimate controllers. It has a light on the bottom, and when you take the controller out, it will automatically turn on and pair. The home button does not turn on this controller. Instead, you must use the start button. It is compatible with the Switch and it can wake up the console. All you have to do is shake it like the Ultimate controllers. It has motion controls, and the button layout is the Nintendo style. The rumble motor is just a regular motor. And remapping the back buttons is easy with a button combination. But notice that the home button will keep blinking whenever you press the remap button. Usually your thumb is on top of it, but when it's not, it gets quite distracting. And there is no way to disable this LED. Also, the Pro 3 is not compatible with the Ultimate software on your smartphone anymore. This was a big advantage on the Pro 2 because you can configure everything through the smartphone app. You can configure the buttons, change the dead zone of the sticks, triggers, change the vibration, and even record macros. As for the Pro 3, you can still use the PC software, but it's very annoying. I don't want to go to my computer just to remap a button and then come back to the console. On the Switch 2, it cannot wake up the console, but it is compatible with the system and it will work fine. You can also use it on the Switch 2 with the dongle. This is very useful when you don't want to pair the controller to the Switch. You can just connect the dongle to the top USB Type-C port and play it that way. Testing on PC, you have just X input. Holding start and select will turn off the controller, so you can't change modes that way. Checking the sticks, the center dead zone is super small. There's no cardinal snapping. The outer dead zone is very small too. And the circularity is average. The resolution has about 600 steps. And as I mentioned, the D-pad is perfect. The diagonals are easy to press, and the input is consistent. Pressing on the center seems to hit all 4 switches, but the controller blocks the activation of all 4 switches through firmware. On PC, the button layout changes to the Xbox layout automatically, and the trigger is pretty responsive. Before the teardown, let's do an unboxing. Disassembling this controller is a nightmare. There's 2 screws on the bottom and I couldn't find more screws anywhere. The shell does not open easily, so I believe there is something else holding this controller. These points here are not meant to be entry points either. And there is no screws under the triggers. With patience and a lot of plastic picks, I was able to pry it open, but it is very difficult. And I ended up breaking one of the plastic clips inside. The analog sticks, back buttons, and rumble motors are on the back shell. And it uses Hall Pi modules. Here's the construction of the triggers. And we can see that the triggers have a metal pivot. This is the front of the board, and here's the dumb switches of the D-pad. The shortcut buttons uses a Kale mouse switch. And the battery has 1000 milliamps of capacity. The D-pad uses a different membrane and design to work with the dome switches. And here's the reason why these buttons are so loud. When you release the button, it has a metal part hidden in plastic. The button has the same shape and size as any original Super Nintendo button, including the Pro 2 controller, so you can just open it and swap them if you want. The membrane is still the same, but it is a bit harder than the original, as we seen on the tension tests. To fix the loud buttons, we have to put something here to dampen the noise. At first, I thought about using electrical tape. It is quite flexible and everyone has those at home. I also took the opportunity to cover those annoying LEDs of the home button. The light will still be visible because it bleeds a bit through the side, but it's much better now. Going back to the buttons, I installed small pieces of the tape and tested the buttons. It still wasn't very good. Then I remembered I had this foam tape from one of my extreme rate mods. The tape has about 2 mm, and looking at the code, I was able to find a similar product online. And with the foam tape, the result is 10 times better. But I didn't have enough tape to cover all of the buttons. Then I found out that the material of the tape is the same as this one on the Rumble motors. The only difference is the thickness. On the tape it is very thin, and on the motor it is very thick. But still, I think it was worth the try, so I cut really small pieces of that tape and put it on the buttons. Additionally, I took the membrane of the Pro 2, which is lighter, and this is the final result. Finally, checking the latency results, the Pro 3 has average results. It's not that bad, but not very good either. Moving to my final thoughts, the Pro 3 is almost the perfect controller. It does everything right until you get to the face buttons. They are very loud and harder to press. The only way to fix it is opening the controller and changing the membrane for a lighter one and the buttons to plastic buttons, or by adding the foam pads as I taught in this video. If you manage to fix that, then you have the perfect classic controller. Pair it with the 8bitDo M30 and you have the perfect combo for classic games. And that's it for today's video. I'll be leaving the links for the controller and the tools used for this mod in the description below. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.